6 myths about genes. How much do we know about genes and the science that deals with genes, genetics? The answer is obvious. Very, very little. One bright sunny day, Thomas Edison, the one who invented the light bulb, said, "I didn't fail. I found 2,000 ways how not to make a light bulb. I only need to find one way to make it work." The same thing with genes. Humanity began to study them quite recently. But here, unlike the case with Edison, not so many ways have been found yet. Some of them have already turned into myths. In today's video, we and Smart is the New Sexy will discuss these myths more closely and try to exclude them from the positive balance of our Earth history forever. So, let's go! Genetically, the closest thing to a person is a pig. The question is very easy to check. You just take sequences of human and other mammals' genomes and see who they look more like. No miracle is going on there. Man is most like a chimpanzee, then gorilla, other primates, then rodents. There's no pig around. If we consider this case, the result will be funny because the closest relatives of pigs will be hippos and whales. This is the success of molecular evolutionary biology, because whales have changed so much that morphological features make it difficult to understand what they look like. A possible source of the myth may be that the pig does not have some proteins that make the tissues recognizable by the human immune system. Pig organs are really the best way among mammals to transplant them to humans, especially if it is a genetically modified pig. That's not true. Geneticists joke. If someone called you a pig, you should at least be wary. What if he wants to get any of your organs? Genes determine all the individual features of a person. The most obvious example is the identical twins, whose genome is as close as possible to each other, but we can see obvious differences, both physiologically and behaviorally. This pretty well illustrates the influence of the genome and external environmental factors. You can try to assess the contribution of genetics and external factors in the manifestation of a particular feature. If we are talking about some pathogenic mutations that lead to very severe genetic syndromes like Down syndrome, then the contribution of genes is 100%. For smaller breakdowns associated with Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, different types of cancer, there are estimates of how often people with a certain mutation have the corresponding syndrome, and they can range from a few percent to a few tens of percent. This myth is partly true. Everyone knows that we are different from each other's DNA sequence. There are many popular scientific articles about the relationship of a different polymorphism, mutation with eye color, curls, and the ability to run fast. But not everyone thinks about the contribution of supragenetic factors and the external environment in the expression of any sign. Besides, this contribution is quite difficult to assess. Apparently, this is the cause of this myth. Everyone has to make a serious face now and nod their heads in response. But silently, because even any shortest phrase can destroy the illusion that we do understand at least something over here. Although, hey guys, are there any professors of genetics here? Analysis of the genome can reveal ethnicity. Belonging to an ethnic group is determined by culture, not by genes. The family influences which ethnic group, or groups if the parents have different ethnic backgrounds, the person will belong to. But this influence is not determined by genes, but by upbringing, the traditions of the society in which a person grew up, the language in which he speaks, and many other features of culture. Of course, everyone receives not only language and education from their parents, but also genes. What parent genes the child will get is determined by the fusion of sperm and egg. It is at this point that the individual's genome is formed. The totality of all hereditary information, which in interaction with the environment determines the further development of the organism. The processes of isolation of individual groups interspersed with migration and mixing of people leave genetic traces. If the number of marriages within the group exceeds the influx of genes from the outside, then in such a group accumulates variants of genes in the spectrum and frequency of occurrence that distinguishes it from its neighbors. In general, nationality, or ethnicity, is not sewn to genes. This phenomenon is not biological, but cultural. The times when it was believed that the ethnos has a biological nature are gone. Ethnicity, as well as language, is not an innate feature. It is acquired, or not, in communication with other people. The myth that blood or genes define nationality is very dangerous, as we all know from our history. It has been used many times to manipulate the public consciousness, the consequences of which range from different depths of discrimination to genocide. So, as our old friend Sherlock Holmes once said, "I have done a number of experiments, and I can say with confidence, it is absolute nonsense. All mutations are harmful." Many mutations are really harmful, but not all of them. Mutations for the body itself can be beneficial, neutral, or harmful. Most of the mutations are neutral. Then there are the harmful, and very, very small part can be considered useful. In particular, the difference between people and the human population on our planet, of course, is determined by a combination of some normal variants of genes, which are now called normal, but they arose at the time as mutations. Then these mutations took hold, and some of them are useful. Damaged some genes may have unexpected positive consequences. For example, a person becomes resistant to some pathogens, such as human immunodeficiency virus. A classic example is sickle cell anemia, where an irregular form of hemoglobin is formed. However, the presence of this mutation prevents malaria infection, and therefore it is entrenched in Africa. People who do not have this mutation die, and those who have it get a chance to survive. On the one hand, it's bad. Well, mutations are all the same, but useful, since it allows to survive. They say X-Men really exist, but did anyone see them? Different people have different genes. All the genes that comprise the genome of any species that have similar function, similar structure, and variations in the structure of these genes may relate only to minor changes that these genes specify. Another thing is, some regulatory moments on and off genes may differ. This may be a cause of differences between organisms. One example, the speed of maturation of the central nervous system. Some kids can talk when they're 2 years old, while others at this time know only a few words. Nerve cells that need to develop and connect to each other in the network do it into different people and different speeds. There are also rare events, so-called mutations, that can really make their host different from most organisms of this species. People easily believe in the myth that genes vary from person to person because they have heard that there are genes on which much depends, and that individual differences and unexpected similarities are facts of real life. However, there are many complex processes between the genome and the characteristics of the organisms that we encounter. This complex system is largely responsible for individual differences. On the other hand, a person always wants to have an authoritative, close to categorical, and scientific opinion. That's why sometimes we hear phrases like, "it's in our genes," or, as the Duke brothers said in Trading Places, "it's in his blood, like a thoroughbred stallion." But it is not that simple.